on a Thursday morning, always pumped up on a Thursday morning, and for obvious reasons, you'll find out in just a wee bit. Good morning, pilgrims, and thank you very much for joining us for the Thursday edition of Gudday Grenada. Today happens to be 7th day of March, week number 1, shot March. And then, let's not waste any time. Let's get right into the rundown this morning because don't want to keep Mr. B waiting this morning. We're going to begin with word about digital currency on its way. Saddle up, pilgrims. Pretty soon, this little EC money you've been playing around with, the $5 bill and the $10 bill and the $20 bill, and them things almost gone. Tell you a bit about that in just a wee bit. Then there's also a question here this morning. Rationale and accountability. Where are they? Thought they were friends at one time. Seems like that's no more. Then your entertainment package for this morning. The national report comes your way from the GIS. And finally this morning, as always, I'm saying as always because I haven't spoken with him, but I haven't heard to the contrary. So I'm expecting that Mr. B will be here. Right? Yeah. What would a Thursday morning be without Alan? What would it be? I hate to even think about it. Anyhow, let's get right into it. The ECCB is to issue the world's first blockchain-based digital currency. Are you ready for this, pilgrims? Check it out. The Eastern Caribbean Central Bank and the Barbados-based fintech company, BIT Incorporated, have signed a contract to conduct a blockchain-issued central bank digital currency, that's a CBDC pilot, within the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. The ECCB digital currency pilot is the first of its kind and will involve a security minted and issued digital version of the EC dollar. It's going to be called DXCD. The EC dollar is referred to as XCD. Well, now it's going to be digital DXCD. Now, this digital EC dollar will be distributed and used by licensed financial institutions and non-bank financial institutions in the ECCU. That's the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. The DXCD will be used for financial transactions between consumers and merchants, including peer-to-peer transactions, or using smart devices. Now, for example, an individual in St. Kitts and Nevis will be able to send DXCD securely from his or her smartphone to a friend in Grenada in seconds and at no cost to either party. Music to your ears, I bet. The governor of the ECCB, Timothy Antoine, emphasized that in contrast to previous research and experiments, the ECCB is going a step further. This is not an academic exercise. The digital EC dollar will be the world's first digital legal tender currency to be issued by a central bank on blockchain. Expect an eventual phased public rollout. The pilot is part of the ECCB's strategic plan for 2017 to 2021, which aims to help reduce cash usage within the ECCU by 50%. Also to promote greater financial sector stability and expedite the growth and development of our member countries. It would be a game changer for the way we do business. Now, I don't know if I'm being very provocative here, but I don't know if Margaret's picked up on this one. You know, we were talking about would have and the use of the word persons and the state of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. You know, every once in a while, these words and phrases become like buzzwords and buzz phrases. Mags, keep an eye out for this one. Game changer. Have you noticed? Game changer is popping up a lot these days. Keep your eyes open. Now, moving right along. The big question, rationale and accountability. Where are they? Here's a quote from something which appeared on Facebook yesterday. It was put up there by Earl Maitland. Earl says, and I quote, "I am left disturbed and sympathize with the people of our Tri-Island state." There's another buzzword, Tri-Island state. "Based on the government's decision to, 1, hand cash over to Liat in such an extremely short period after the announcement was made that made public that Liat needs financial assistance. The same government that says our country has no monies. 2, secure another loan for lights at the National Stadium and La Sagesse for the comfort of foreign players who rarely travel to Grenada to be able to practice. 3, in October 2016, the government announced that the government, had secured $8 to $10 million for the said lights, with the intention of lighting the National Stadium. Where has this money gone? 4, announced the impending erection, I like this one, impending erection of a flyover, neglecting the maintenance of the traffic lights, which monies were already spent on. This level of priority at this time, given the state of our general hospital, schools, roads, and absence of a high court, is unacceptable. What is the true intention of the Keith Mitchell-led administration? Where is the money coming from? Why isn't the government first honoring its obligation to the constitutional rights of the people living within the state of Grenada? Why not secure a better healthcare system for the people of Carriacou and Petit Martinique? Why must they always have to travel to Grenada? Whatever happened to secure employment at a locally owned factory? Pensions, health, justice, employment, flyover, lights, Liat. Should they all be given the same priority? That came from Mr. Earl Maitland. Folks, let's take a look here on my right. John is saying, GG and crew, good morning from Dependency. From Dependency number 1. Johnny, you're funny as hell. Yeah, I think it was Sharon yesterday who sort of took umbrage with the fact that John was referring to Petit Martinique as and Carriacou as parish number 7. Well, she was saying Carriacou and Petit Martinique are dependencies of Grenada. So he's now referring to Carriacou as dependency. Now, hey, John, please. Margaret is saying, good morning, folks, and a pleasant day. Morning to you, Mags. Peter Bishop is saying, good morning to you and the rest of the class from Long Island. He's back and forth. T.F. Richards is saying, good morning, family. Hello there, Lincoln. Good to see you. Hope you're feeling fine, my friend. My thoughts and prayers are with you. He's saying, good day from Wellington, Florida. God's richest blessings to all and much love. God bless you, my friend. Kipling Francis is saying, good morning, Mr. Grant and everyone. God's blessings to all. Thank you, bro. John saying, no DigiCash for me. If it's not in my wallet, I can't spend it. Yeah, John, me ain't got nothing to spend, digital or not. Nesta, oh boy, Nesta is sending hugs and kisses and everything. Good to see you, Nesta. Bernard Gilbert saying good morning. T.F. Richards says, George, it's my understanding that the company that made these traffic lights no longer exists, and as such, parts are not readily available. So, it is my presumption that a new set of lights would have to be sourced for the island. Fitzroy Adams is saying, good morning, all. Lydia James is also saying good morning. John says, Earl, maybe look towards the PRC, People's Republic of China. And Cheryl Calise, hello, Cheryl is saying good morning from Atlanta. Good to see you all, folks. Take a break, come back with the National Report.
Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try their sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
I'm always on the move. Training, traveling, competing. So it's good to know I have Quad Bank in the palm of my hand.
Introducing e-banking, one of many customer convenience services from Grenada Cooperative Bank, and there's more to come.
It's swift, simple, and secure.
Welcome home.
Hey, Lynn.
Hey, neighbor.
Here's the bill I asked you to pay for me.
How did you get your electricity bill to be so low?
For one, we size our transformers just for what we need. And we unplug transformers, chargers, and other devices when they're not in use. We also replaced our light bulbs with LEDs.
They burn less energy, right?
Much less. I even replaced the seal on my refrigerator door to keep the cold air in.
And Grenlec is always advising us not to open the fridge too often.
That's right. And my family washes and irons in bulk.
With fuel prices changing all the time, how do you know if it is working?
We pay attention to the usage history table. Over time, our average usage has decreased.
So while Grenada can't control fuel prices, I can conserve energy and save money.
Grenlec, energizing our Grenada.
Grenada gets positive outlook on its journey towards climate resilience. Details to this story and more in the National Report. With With the details to the news for Wednesday, March 6th, I am Rakisha St. Louis. A local climate change consultant is projecting a positive outlook for Grenada on its journey towards climate resilience. Dr. Spencer Thomas says it is good news that Grenada has all the legal framework in place to push implementation and secure funding for climate resilient projects. He was addressing senior management officials and permanent secretaries at a high-profile capacity building seminar on climate change adaptation and financing at the National Stadium on Wednesday. However, he says more needs to be done to build national level capacity to access more funding from international organizations.
There are a lot of opportunities available, but we have to get our house in order to ensure that we are able to leverage the funds available for climate change. I think we have a very good international profile, but as we indicated to the Cabinet, this is not enough. We need to have the national level capacity to leverage the resources. We're coming out of the structural adjustment program. I think we are in a very good state right now. We have a lot of legislation in place. The legal framework is in place. We need to get some bodies, some really human resource, and we need to populate some of the ministries and ensure that they have the systems in place so that we can access the resources.
Grenada's outlook is positive as the knowledge of what the country is faced with is well known. Dr. Thomas warned that the consequences of not doing enough to address climate change as a small state can be detrimental.
We know what the science is saying. The science is saying to us that the consequences of not doing anything, and not doing enough, is dire going forward for all small island developing states, for all the countries in the region and beyond. So we now need to take action. Our position has always been in the negotiation that we need to be very strong, very firm, very clear in the negotiation, and very ambitious, because we believe that if we're not on the table of the negotiation and making those requisite noises and demands, that we will be eaten for supper.
The workshop provided an insight on the interlinkages with other important policies relevant for Grenada's climate responses, highlight the importance of Grenada's obligation to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, and made recommendations for climate implementations. In related news, senior managers and senior government officials are more equipped to tackle the effects of climate change. This is following a two-day high-profile capacity building workshop for decision makers organized by the Environment Division and GIZ in the Ministry of Climate Resilience. The workshop was geared towards sensitizing ministers and permanent secretaries about climate change adaptation and how recommendations and strategies can be incorporated into the work in their respective ministries. Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Climate Resilience, the Environment, Forestry, Disaster Management and Information, Marina Jessamy, says Grenada's focus must be on project implementation and sustainability.
We live along the front lines of climate change. And I think the 2017 Atlantic hurricane season demonstrates the seriousness of that. The Ministry of Climate Resilience continue to link climate adaptation, mitigation, and disaster risk reduction for that very reason. I believe that we have a policy infrastructure in place. We have a national adaptation plan. We have a national climate change policy. We have a nationally determined contributions program that speaks to mitigation. We have a national coastal zone management policy. We have legislation that will revise, but it's implementation time. And truly we need your support. And I believe that with a holistic view on climate resilience action, we will be able to support PS Bizan and the team to continue implementation at a very rapid pace.
The workshop was held against the backdrop of a 2018 meeting on adaptation to climate change in Grenada at the Senior Management Board, where it was decided that permanent secretaries are key to providing guidance to the focal points so as to contribute to the success of the National Adaptation Plan. Permanent Secretaries Pauline Peters, Elvis Morin and Kevin Andel are all excited about networking to contribute towards Grenada's drive to climate adaptation and resilience.
It is very important, the formation of the focal points, the climate change focal point network, where our various focal points within the ministries can work together to develop the projects and deal with the issues affecting climate change across sectors.
We have to be integral with it. I cannot see us being a standalone or on a limb where climate issues are concerned. So we have to contribute by way of doing the legwork, that is providing the data, providing the information on the ground, by also formulating projects that are going to benefit us as a sector. So I believe we have an integral role to play in the entire process.
If we use the Whitney Houston song, I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. One of the major champions for climate change would be children, would be young people. Now, because we are in charge of that, we can mainstream climate change issues within the educational sector. That now requires not only Ministry of Education, or Ministry of Youth, Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, all of the partners coming together and approaching this holistically as one body. What I believe strongly that Ministry of Education has a critical role to play in the whole issue of climate change.
This is the National Report. We'll have more news after the break.
Tomorrow's future is here today. Friday, April 5th. Kirani James Athletic Stadium. National Secondary School Games. Run, throw, jump. National Secondary School Games 2019. Your games, your future.
Welcome back. Grenada can look forward to hosting night cricket in the near future once lights are installed at the National Cricket Stadium according to ICC specifications. During Tuesday's post-cabinet briefing, Honorable Oliver Joseph, Minister for Trade, Industry, Cooperatives and CARICOM Affairs, says lights will be also installed at the Lasages playing field, where practice matches will be held by international teams. He says they must ensure that Grenada conforms to the rules of the International Cricket Council.
We had announced previously that the stadium will be lighted up so we can have night cricket, international cricket played on the lights. Well, we are almost there now because the tendering process has been completed and the lights have now been sourced as we speak, because the ICC have their specification, which we must meet the international standard. And so we have to ensure that we have the right light. The money has been budgeted for both the National Stadium and Lasages. Now you might ask why Lasages? Because Lasages is the ground on which the international teams will go and practice. Right? So you have to have the same standard of lights when teams come to Grenada.
And finally, Grenada will celebrate International Women's Day on Friday with a women's village that will, among other things, encourage women to tap into non-traditional job markets. It will also serve as an avenue for networking. Mrs. Elaine Henry McQueen is the Senior Program Officer for the Division of Gender and Family Affairs in the Ministry of Social Development, Housing and Community Empowerment. She highlights some of the main activities for the day.
The specific activity for International Women's Day that we are pleased to host and to collaborate with several partners on is a women's village. The women's village will be at the Botanic Gardens, the Sir Eric Gary Botanical Gardens, near to the gazebo and the surrounding areas there. It will be on Friday, March 8th from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. This activity is one where particularly women and girls can come together to receive information on a range of topics, but especially about non-traditional jobs, and to encourage them to widen the kinds of ideas we have about what is good for women to do as employment. We will also hold several cafes, discussion cafes. We will receive speeches, there will be tea, and other events. There will be entertainment and activities ongoing during that day.
The Ministry of Social Development is working with its partners to host the event. One of them is Seroptimus International Grenada, which helps to improve the lives of women and girls. Its president is Loris Pascal.
We are collaborating this year with the Ministry of Social Development, Housing and Community Empowerment on this very important theme. And we're going to be just shifting a bit from the theme, but I think it's the same. We're looking for balance for better. So when we look at how the economic space is being petered out for our women and girls, we feel that we should be encouraging more to take up those jobs that seems to be paying the most money and which is the most frequent.
That story just ended the national report for today, Wednesday, March 6th. Recapping the top story. Grenada gets positive outlook on its journey towards climate resilience. On behalf of everyone who made this newscast possible, I am Rakisha St. Louis saying thank you for joining us. Until next time.
Together with you, our customers, we energize our community.
Together with you, we energize our economy. We are working together to give our nation a better tomorrow.
With you, we energize our future. Together, we energize our nation.
Thank you for partnering with us as we energize our Spice.
Renlec, energizing our Grenada.
Grenadian General Insurance Company, strength and stability. Grenadian General Insurance Company, tell your friends, tell your family. We cover householders comprehensive, motor and even fire too. Contractors all risk burglary, public liability, professional indemnity, directors liability, and wait, we still have more. Come and find out more what you're waiting for.
We are located on Scott Street, St. George's. For more information, call 440-2434.
Tell everybody.
Alrighty, folks, there you have it, your prized possession every weekday morning from the GIS. That's the National Report. And of course, my analysts were extremely busy once again this morning at work. Let's begin with Margaret. Margaret says, here come the beggars again. The knowledge of what the country is faced with is well known. Huh? So says Max. You know what she's talking about, eh? Yeah. T.F. Richards says, we love to put legal frameworks in place. But what we're doing locally, but what are we doing locally? For example, are we looking at the pesticide and insecticides being used? So says, or so's asking TF. Kipling says, did I hear right? Did I hear him right? Coming out of the structural adjustment program? Margaret says, TF, the focus of the legal framework is not implementing change. Rather, it is to beg for more money. I like the way she spells money. TF says, if policies were money, Grenada would be the Dubai of the Caribbean. Sure, Mr. B is going to have something to say about that. TF also goes on to say, now that the so-called permanent secretaries are so upbeat about climate resilience, let's sit and wait to see what they implement or filter down within their individual ministries. Or let's see if they would set up a committee. For those of you who weren't with us, I think it was yesterday, we were talking about, you don't want to get something done, set up a committee. Okay. Kipling says, when these people speak, I wonder, do they think that they know it all? Or do they think we, the listeners, are all dumb? I could answer that, Kipling, but I'm going to bite my tongue. Not going to say a word. TF says, George, we were all wrong about the first set of money that was secured for the lights in 2016. That money was used to negotiate for the lights we're now securing. Ah, you little fink. Anyhow, TF says, I'm subject to correction, but was the Botanical Gardens actually renamed the Sir Eric Matthew Botanical Gardens? I get your point. I get your point. Pilgrims, I'll tell you what. I goofed this morning. I goofed. This being a Thursday morning, Georgie Porgy went ahead and set up as usual, punched his buttons and plugged in everything to have this gentleman here remotely, as he always does, has been doing for, a couple of years. He's here. Take a look. Recognize that? That's Mr. Alan Baczynski. And he doesn't know where the camera is. Notice his eyes are up there and over here and down there. Look straight ahead there. That's where the camera... yeah. Pointing at them. Alan, good morning, my friend. Good to see you. How are thou?
Good morning. I'm very well.
Yeah. I
sound is okay?
Huh?
Sound is okay?
You're not going to hear anything there.
All right, fair enough.
I can't afford the proper
Okay,
console.
let's go.
Okay. I noticed you wear one of my favorite colors this morning, and this one says 50th anniversary and
That was some time ago. But I keep these commemorative T-shirts.
Okay.
No, why am I here?
Scare the hell out of me.
Yeah, well, the point is I'm taking advantage of the dry spell now to have some remedial work done at home, and the dogs are barking and there's just too much noise, so
okay.
I came down, and while the problem that we have in Grenada and in St. George's and in the south with traffic congestion, one of the problems with traffic congestion, the police said recently they were looking at possible solutions which might involve some park and shuttle arrangements. Well, I'm familiar with park and ride, but this morning I chose to ride, and I've parked downstairs. So I'm riding my scooter because I'm doing my bit for resilience, and I'm very concerned about the recent continuing imbalance of trade that was announced. Apparently our imports last year exceeded our exports by a greater margin than heretofore. So we need to be doing something about it. So I'm playing my part. I'm riding a scooter. I get at least 100 miles per gallon. And because the police have reported we have over 40,000 registered vehicles. These vehicles need fuel. But here again we have the famous conundrum, because the government wants to reduce the import bill, But at the same time, since they're collecting $5.50 on every gallon of fuel that is consumed, they're not going to do anything to reduce the number of vehicles on the road. It doesn't suit them.
Exactly.
So we have this issue. And similarly, we've heard a lot of talk about LIAT. Now, if LIAT is mismanaged, and this is nothing new, the complaints about mismanagement, why hasn't something been done? And I've seen it suggested that the issue has to do with political interference. Because you keep changing qualified, experienced personnel in the position of chief executive officer. They are paid a lot of money in keeping with their experience and qualifications.
3 and 4 years, was it?
Yep. And that was in 2016, up to 2016. So in fact, I believe I'm correct that the current CEO is someone who came up through the ranks and I believe was involved in marketing and has now been in place because effectively we have seen that certain prime ministers, and I hasten to say right now, not ours, but certain prime ministers of contributing governments get involved with this sort of detailed day-to-day routine operations, such as determining the number of flights to a particular destination. Now, I think you will recall, it may have well have been in 2016 or so, when LIAT reduced the number of flights into Grenada and diverted them to St. Vincent as a result of political interference, or maybe as a consequence of a statement made by our certain prime ministers of contributing that no more money would be provided to LIAT by Grenada. Now, it's sort of counterproductive in my view because I can tell you that I have come across a document which is a simple ticket for travel return from Grenada to Antigua. The fare paid by the traveler is a total of $506.24. That is $506.24 US currency. You won't be surprised to hear that the base fare is $278 US.
Right.
According to the ticket, the fare analysis, charges related to the Grenada side amount to $126.38 US, and charges related to the Antigua side $101.86. Total taxes, service charges, baggage screening fee, and all sorts of little things, $228.24. That is 45% of the total fare paid by the traveler goes to two respective governments. All I can say about that is at least the government of Antigua is contributing to LIAT.
Yes, absolutely.
So the question then arises, since the heads, it has been reported that the heads met recently in St. Kitts and a decision was made that LIAT needs money, they will run out of money in 10 days, well, I think in 8 days by now. So the money has to come from somewhere, and in the interim, we understand that our Minister of, well, I don't know what he is because he has a fairly wide portfolio, but I've heard him referred to on a recent newscast as a Minister of Economics. So he is saying that yes, a contribution will be made by Grenada, but we have to wait on some formula. I don't know where this formula is coming from.
Supposedly from the end.
Yeah, but they need to move quickly. But questions have been asked. We've come out of the structural adjustment program where it has been reported that we are generating massive surpluses and that the CBI program has had another very good year in 2018. So clearly, there are funds on paper. The question is, what's being done about it. Because the most recent quarterly debt report up to September 30th indicates that our debt to GDP ratio is down around 63 point something percent, I think, at the end of September, which is remarkable because the previous half-year report, I think we were above 65%. But the most illuminating sentence in that entire report to me is that with regard to debt servicing requirements, interest payments were some $40 million less than budgeted. And the explanation given for the difference is exchange rate fluctuations and variations in timing of disbursements. It seems to me that if you had budgeted to make your interest payments by a certain date, and you had not in fact made those payments, that somebody's taken their eye off the ball, to use a sporting analogy. And with regard to sports, someone was mentioning lighting. So 4 or 5 years ago, we know that the then minister, formerly Honorable Roland Bola, made a public statement to the effect that money was going to come and that discussions were in train with Canadian Banknote Company or something like that.
The money had been found, not going to come.
It was found.
They found the money.
Ah.
And they also signed some agreement with people to do the work.
But it has not yet come to fruition.
Oh.
But I understand, and this is just information provided by a member of the public on a call-in program, that the minister, Senator Cox from Carriacou, has gone off to the States. Poor fella, he's missing Carnival. He has missed Carnival in Carriacou because he's in the United States or somewhere looking at lights. Now, I have a little difficulty understanding why the minister has to go to look at lights.
Not you alone.
Because we do have legislation regarding public procurement.
Thank you.
And the minister should have no involvement in this whatever. And I would hope that on his return, he is required to give a full accounting as to how much money was spent on his trip, whom did he see, what was the purpose of the trip, and what is the outcome, and whether or not we have received value for the money expended. Because if we don't get serious and just pass legislation and there is no oversight, we are not going to dig ourselves out of the hole that we seem to continually remain in.
Maybe I've heard some other points being raised about this gentleman's trip. First of all, the ICC has standards as far as lighting for various venues is concerned. Okay. The question that was being asked by the public is, what expertise does this man, he's going to help decide what lighting is being used here. What expertise does he have?
Well, I haven't seen his resume.
Please, Alan.
No, he is actually, no, what is his portfolio? He is a junior minister, what used to be called a parliamentary secretary because he's a senator. But he is responsible for culture, is he not?
Is he?
I
So
thought
that
so.
qualifies you to decide what lighting should be used at our national stadium?
Beats me.
Okay.
But this is the sort of, I don't know what is the word I'm looking for, to tell you the honest truth. I'm at a loss for words.
Which is almost impossible to believe that Alan's at a loss for words. Well, here are some people who are not at a loss this morning. First of all, you were talking about Liat a little while ago. We'll get back to the statement. T.F. Richard says, Mr. B, there's a phrase that says, who pays the piper calls the tune. This is the exact case with the Liat. Cassandra Mitchell says, Let me try to understand this. $10 million for the stadium, $40 billion for the Belt and Road Initiative, millions for LEAT, $30 million drawn down for the Blue Growth Development. Anyone else want to add? Who is paying these monies back? What are the loan terms? What are the interest rates? Some very valid questions. I'm sure you're going to want to comment. T.F. Richard says, George, it is my understanding that whether by air or by sea, Grenada has one of the highest landing fees. I may just be subject to correction. Margaret responds to Cassandra by saying, Cassandra Mitchell, since they go be long dead by the time them loans come due, is your children and grandchildren that go have to pay for it. And I'm speaking just the way Margaret writes, okay? So
No. It's fairly acceptable. But having said that, remember that we are still governed by the Fiscal Responsibility Act. And so we have heard a lot of talk about all of these negotiations about the blue initiative, the blue economy, climate change, resilience, all of that stuff. But it remains the case that we cannot, with impunity, break the law regarding the Fiscal Responsibility Act. There are consequences.
I had an economist in here last weekend, and I asked her the same thing. Anyhow, another story. TF says, but isn't it ironic that recently the Prime Minister spoke about the whole idea of opening the aviation market in the Caribbean? And now, Grenada is, all of a sudden, giving money to LEAT? So says TF.
Well, the reality is that the aviation market is, I suppose, a good example of the difficulties faced with all capital-intensive entities or operations or businesses where you have a relatively small market. It is difficult when competition is introduced for everybody to survive. We can point to Caribbean Star. We thought that Caribbean Star was our salvation, that it would force LEAT to use a phrase, to, what was it? Tighten up and fly right, or shape up and fly right. But it turned out that Caribbean Star was in fact funded by Alan Stanford's Ponzi scheme. It was not in fact an efficiently run, profitable airline. We've seen what has happened when they opened up the telecoms regime. So, yes, rates came down, jobs were shed, and we have a lot of dissatisfaction with the level of service provided by all the players in the market. What particularly concerns me now is the fact that one provider, which only operated wirelessly, has received a license, which is now the subject of a court case. Yes, and they are busily stringing up cables all over the island, but not using local labor. And I fail to understand how the Minister of Economics or the Minister of Labor could have issued work permits for the importation of workmen to do work which clearly is within the expertise of local people who used to work for cable and wireless. Cable and wireless. They know how to run cable.
Okay. Amy, don't expect a response from me. Look at the way he's looking at me. Don't expect a response from me. I am a little bit obsessed now.
And for the record,
Yeah.
some people have looked at these individuals. They are well covered when they're working to guard them against the sun, naturally. But some people assumed that they were Chinese. No, they're not Chinese. I understand they are from Guatemala.
Okay. All right. DF says, George, for heaven's sakes, the minister needs an oversee, O-V-E-R-S-E-E, not S-E-A. The minister needs an oversea trip. It's part of his arrangement with the political establishment.
You're not going to comment on that?
Of course, I was hoping you would.
No, absolutely not. You already have difficulty with your license.
Kipling says, we are the only country who masters the art of putting square pegs in round holes.
All 15 of them.
John says, no cable running here in Carriacou, Amy.
Ah, that would require presumably an undersea connection.
Undersea connection.
Skirting Kikamjini.
Speaking about undersea, sir, have you heard some talk about relieving the traffic congestion in St. George by building, I've heard it referred to as an overpass, I've heard it referred to as a flyover. Have you heard?
You can go back to probably 1997 or 1998 when the then Minister of Works was talking about a ring road around the carriage to the cruise terminal. In those days, the cruise terminal was supposed, according to the original architectural drawings, to have 2 piers, not 1, and to go all the way up to Queen's Park. Those were good architectural drawings. Now, the last time I heard mention of a flyover was quite interesting because it was in a post-cabinet briefing hosted by the Right Honorable Prime Minister, and he was talking about the requirement to get solutions, one of which might well be these flyovers. And GBN immediately put on a video of, I think it was Spaghetti Junction, which may be in Atlanta, Georgia. So I guess there are people who believe that this is the sort of infrastructure that we can put down in the southern part of the island. But I mean, it's not surprising because this follows not long after the announcement that given the number of flights we have coming into Point Salines, that we need to have another runway. Then that boiled down when people ask questions, what in God's name are you talking about? Another runway? And then apparently it's another taxiway. And then it may not be another taxiway, it may just be an extension of the existing taxiway. But fundamentally, it is given the number of flights that we have, which, as you and I both know, you don't need 2 hands to count the flights.
No, but one thing I will admit, I'm impressed that nowadays, I mean, on Facebook, there's some people who work at the airport and are very active posting pictures on Facebook. Sometimes I see 3 or 4 commercial jets.
Yep, they're all coming in at the same time, which tells you what is the rationale for this. Because it just guarantees that there will be congestion and delays.
Getting back to this overpass, overfly, whatever you call it, some time ago, we promised some sort of zip line between, I think it was Grenada or was it up by Government House down to the fort or something?
Yeah, that's, well, when we have foreign investors coming, a lot is made about, what they plan to do. I think it was supposed to go from Fort Frederick to Fort George.
Okay.
That's, it's just blowing smoke. We have to be very careful. Every time you hear a politician say that we have another investor coming and they're going to put in some project or other and how many $1 million. The reality is that because the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD,
yeah.
because they are tightening up on the tax havens, the people with funny money are trying everything possible to ensure that their funds, the dirty funds, are not traceable. And so it goes round and round. I mean, the most recent revelation is about a Russian company called Troika Bank or something like that, which was closed down in Lithuania 5 or 6 years ago. But the money that went through that bank ended up, not surprisingly, in the British Virgin Islands, Cayman Islands, Bermuda, Panama, Channel Islands, all over the place. So it shows you the hypocrisy of the British government when they're talking about tax havens and the need for transparency. But I will say that any Russian investor needs to be looked at very, very carefully with regard not just to whether the funds are now clean, but going back 10 years or so. Where was this individual 10 years ago?
Yeah, good question. Yeah.
And how have they suddenly become multimillionaires and billionaires? You can start with the Russian president, Mr. Putin. He was a former KGB colonel. He is reputedly one of the wealthiest men in the world, using frontmen, including his personal chef. Seriously.
Always had a good meal on hand. Andreas St. B says, convestors, C-O-N-V-E-S-T-O-R-S, like Charles Lew, eh?
Yes, yes.
And by the way, Fitzroy Adams says, Carriacou is only important to Grenada when election time comes around. Not only for government, but for the union leaders as well. Well, by the way, you voting tomorrow?
I'm not a member of the union.
Oh, jeez. You're absolved. What else here? I see somebody here by the name of Richard St. Bernard. I wonder if that's the same Richard St. Bernard I went to presentation college with.
Probably is, if he's in Toronto.
Are you in Toronto, Richard? Is that Snakey? You know Richard?
He's my first cousin.
Oh, Richard's your first cousin? Ah. Margaret Francis says, Alan, add to the hypocrisy list, Delaware and Nevada in the United States.
Indeed. They attract incorporated businesses without asking too many questions because of their low tax rate or no tax rate.
Yeah. All right, Alan, I'm afraid I'm going to have...
I just wanted, you mentioned the union. I did see that the Ministry of Education gave instructions yesterday for teachers to attend the games in Queen's Park, because it's a normal school day, and so they are expected to be in the park. Apparently, the teachers' union has countered by saying it's a normal school day, therefore teachers are supposed to be in school. So it occurred to me as we prepare to commence the observances of 3 months of celebration of the anniversary of the March 13th coup d'etat, that there must be people who still believe that you could pass an order and that out of fear of loss of life or liberty, that people must comply. But thankfully, those days are long gone.
This morning, hey, listen, good point, Alan. This morning, just before I got started here this morning, somebody phoned me to complain about the fact that apparently the students are being instructed to attend the school games. And the person is claiming that that is way beyond the remit of the ministry.
I wouldn't be surprised, but I don't want to comment because I haven't seen the regulations. I can only comment on what was on the news, with regard to instructions being issued by the ministry and the president of the teachers union rebutting the position stated by the ministry. Not the minister, the ministry. But again, we're talking about political interference in LIAT. This is political interference in education.
Yeah. We are way down the road, and I'm not sure too many Grenadians understand how far gone we are. Anyhow, Donna Joseph says, and the GPG conmen who are supposed to be drilling for oil here in Grenada.
I did say we need to be careful about Russians, particularly those who've been here for a very long time. You will recall one Lev Model and the call center in St. Andrew, where that particular bankruptcy was saved by the dividend paid by Cable and Wireless Grenada, which should have gone to the government and people of Grenada, was used to pay off the debt of a private company.
Cassandra Mitchell says, let's not forget that Grenada has signed on to the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, UNCAC, the United Nations Convention on Transnational Organized Crime, and the Inter-American Convention Against Corruption, ACAC.
What is the first one? UNC? What?
The first one was the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, UNCAC.
Oh, I thought you was going to say UNC, nothing yet.
You know, I really don't take these things seriously. No, I really don't. I'll tell you one thing I can tell you, that governments of Grenada have traditionally signed on to a lot of treaties and conventions they know diddly squat about. Absolutely nothing. They sign on because they know that if they don't, they're going to be deprived of grants down the road. Donna Joseph says, the political games, the ministry doesn't care about the children. Now they want their game to come off. Well, the children are preparing for CXC. Donna, I'm not quite sure I understand what you're saying. Cassandra says, we need to start holding our leaders accountable regardless of which political organization is in office. Where have I heard that before? How many times have you heard that, sir?
Yep.
Margaret says, well, they may force the kids to go to the park. They can't make them run. Yes. Kipling says, Alan, it's not interference. It's political control.
My response to that is we passed that stage. Regardless of the fact that there are certain intellectuals who, as I mentioned earlier, will be embarking on a 3-month program of observances celebrating the coup d'etat and the period of repression and political control that followed for the next 4.5 years.
Joyce C. Smith says, why are none of the investors ever offering to invest in the health service?
Oh my goodness, I was hoping nobody would mention health, because it is my belief that because they put health and international business in the same ministry, that is only international business that taking place.
Good point, sir. Good point. Amy, we got to run. It's after 10 o'clock. And I do appreciate your running away from your dog this morning to keep us company. You know,
Thank you.
When you talked about that dog, it reminded me of Gloria Payne Banfield. Gloria used to be doing the same segment you're doing.
And she had a dog barking
oh,
in the
Lord
back.
have mercy. That dog and waited until she went on the air and then just went ballistic.
But you know, there is a difference, and you can tell from the barking as to whether or not it's a dog or a dog.
Mags, dog or dog? Oh, yeah. Always a pleasure, Amy, as usual. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us. And folks, on that note, we are, let me see here, just about time to pull the plate. Yeah, we're going to take a little break here and come back and wrap it up right after this. Alrighty, folks, just about time to pull the curtain down. And let me see here. Donna Joseph says, "Ha ha ha, yes, Mr. B, you always make my Thursday." Hey, hey, hey. Well, we're going to see if we could hire him, come back next week. Pilgrims, as we always do every weekday morning, one parting word from the Holy Scriptures. And this one comes to you from the second book of Timothy. Timothy chapter 4, verses 3 to 5 says, "For the time will come when people will not put up with sound doctrine. Instead, to suit their own desires, they will gather around them a great number of teachers to say what their itching ears want to hear. They will turn their ears away from the truth and turn aside to myths. But you, keep your head in all situations, enduring hardship, and do the work of an evangelist. Discharge all the duties of your ministry." 2 Timothy chapter 4, 3 to 5. On that note, Georgie Porgy is going to take off, go feed his face. Hold on a sec here. John Crow Alexander on Facebook says, "These leather bags are all made where in Grenada?" Wow. I guess he's referring to that land commercial we ran there a little bit. Okay, folks, thanks a lot. And we'll see you again tomorrow morning by God's grace. In the meantime, may the good Lord bless and keep you.